So, good evening, friends. Meeting again in the session of Robert's philosophy, and we have started discussing about the chapter that is the Psora or Deficiency, that is chapter number 24 from the H.A.Roberts. Here, he has postulated there is one hypothesis in order to explain to the world the concept of Psora, not from Hahnemannian angle, but with modern language, with modern concept. This is the study of H.A.Robert related with the periodic table. He has studied the periodic table thoroughly. He has made the group of 50 remedies as explained by Boning Hussein, out of which the 16 remedies were from vegetable kingdom, one remedy from the animal kingdom, and rest of the 33 were from the mineral kingdom. Out of those 33, three were out of 33, three were having higher molecular weight, and rest of them were less than 53 of atomic weight. Those, that is platinum, barata, and the aurum, which are included over there actually by Boning Hussein as an antisoric remedy, actually they never takes part in the construction, but they are part and parcel of destructive element. And those goes with the syphilitic miasm. And what remains were the 30 elements. Then he has made a group of constructive elements of the body from different physiological books, biochemistry books, and he got the elements, list of elements, which were around the same and which were having molecular weight less than 53. The higher atomic weight elements never takes part in the construction. There are probable two reasons were mentioned, out of which one was significant, and that was that these heavier elements remains to be there at the center of Earth, because of which it becomes stable. The remaining elements which are having less atomic weight remains in superficial part of the Earth, which are taken up by the plants, and on the basis of those plants, vegetables, we used to develop. We used to use that as a food, and those elements goes in our body, constructs our body, and that is the probable and most significant reason why the higher molecular weight elements never takes part as a part and parcel of construction, but only the elements which are having molecular weight less or atomic weight less than 53 takes part in the construction of element. Now he goes ahead to explain his postulate, hypothesis. So let us start on page number 197, the paragraph. So in reality, we might add to our list the argon 18 and nitrogen 7 as appearing in some regularity in the body. With our knowledge of power of infinitesimals beyond the range of laboratory analysis, we dare not say that any element, however small its proportion or vague its relationship, plays no part. So he says in that list, we must add two more elements, argon and nitrogen. Again, with our knowledge of disturbing powers of the radioactive elements, we can see definitely why they were not included in the construction, for they are essentially destructive. These correspond to the action of syphilitic 10 and should be classed as an antisyphilitic in action. So, there are radioactive elements are there, and those radioactive elements destruct themselves. They throws away the radioactivity and because of which they are getting changed. They are destructing themselves. So all radioactive elements themselves throws away the rays, and through that rays they lose the energy, and same element becomes turned into another element after losing their atomic weight. So those never takes part in the construction, they are destructive elements. There was one footnote to there. Argon accompanies air into the lungs as nitrogen does, but both cases they play no part in the economy of the body. So he is given one short note related with the argon, that argon never takes part in basically the as the element of the body. Nitrogen, yes, whole body is made up of nitrogen products. Again, however, we are discussing primarily those elements which in simple form or combined are essentially constructive. To demonstrate the significance of our hypothesis that Psora and deficiency in properly balanced essentials are one and the same, or if they are not identical problems, we must admit that here lies a significant key to the problem of Psora and one worthy of deeper study. So his hypothesis was that these elements, if there is a deficiency of these elements in the body, it produces certain types of symptoms. And those symptoms are very close to those elements, those antisoric remedies, which are antisoric, and those are nothing but the symptoms of the soric miasm. So he wants to explain one hypothesis that whether it is Psora or whether it is just a deficiency. From modern point of view, this can be labeled as a deficiency. From our point of view, we label it by the name of Psora. And then he puts further his hypothesis. He explains it with reasoning. Without question, there is some essential failure of system to assimilate the necessary constructive materials that provide the background of so-called soric state. Yet, we find that emotional or other stresses develops the psoric symptomatology even in constitutions that have been sound and healthy. Here, we find that our theory of psora as a deficiency of proper elements is verified. For instance, those chest conditions with many functional symptoms, we are often able to trace these to the improper breathing habits, and this again to the emotional strain that has broken the habit of rhythm. Or perhaps the breathing habit has been normal until the necessity of the remaining long hours in close, unaired rooms has forced the system into unnatural and insufficient intake of oxygen. The greatest asset of the body is that of adaptability, but this in itself under unnatural or forced conditions, while permitting life to continue under emergent or hampered conditions, breeds a train of symptoms that Hahnemann described as sorry. He has given simple example of oxygen. If you don't take breath properly, you're not getting oxygen properly. What symptoms arise because of that? You feel breathless, you feel frightened. Sometimes, if it is of a severe character, you might land into cyanosed conditions and you are gasping for the breath. This may be because of oxygen lack on one side, and this condition might have arisen because of some emotional stress also. There is some emotional stress, and patient has landed into the hypoventilation or hyperventilation, and because of which he has become breathless. So, there was nothing abnormal in the body. Everything was functional, and emotional state produces same state as is produced by oxygen lacking. And both are similar. On one side, it is so you label it by the name of Psora because it is functional. On another side, you label it is lack of oxygen. So this is what he wants to explain, whether it is Psora or a deficiency. So he tries to explain his concept with different elements and their deficiency at the same time, the Psoric manifestation. And this hypothesis gives a different view in your mind with which you can go ahead, with which you can study further regarding your homeopathy. So the just a word again and again, same word, that is the dynamics. It doesn't have significance because people never understand the question of dynamics unless we try to explain them in their language. So he explains it with different elements, different examples. The body elements best known to the student of biochemistry are hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, nitrogen, fluorine, sodium, magnesium, silicon, phosphorus, sulfur, chlorine, potassium, calcium, manganese, iron, copper, zinc, arsenic, and iodine. Chemists have been able to estimate the percentage of these elements present in the organism. Even such small amounts as those of arsenic, with its sixth decimal proportion in thyroid and brain, and 0.0000019% in the liver. It is comparatively easy to define the constructive purposes of these elements, such as calcium. Yet, there is some purpose aside from that of mere brick and mortar, for even most obvious. Magnesium is found throughout the body, in the lungs, glands, brain, muscles, muscular organs such as heart. This has been determined with a fair amount of measurable accuracy. Yet, how do we account for the fact that a magnesium free diet sends animal into convulsions? Or that tin found in traces in tongue and brain is related definitely to the sense of taste? When cobalt and nickel discovered in the pancreas are lacking, just what influence does that have in the development of diabetes? So he is giving you different examples. If these are the elements, those are elements which takes part in the construction of human body. They are in so minute quantity requires, but it is required. If it is not there in your body, it starts producing the disorder. He has given simple example of nickel and cobalt, which lies in a very minute quantity in pancreas, but if it is lacking, it may lead to the diabetes. He has given another example about the manganese. Magnesium free diet produces convulsions inside body. It is so minutely required in the body. See, this infinite small amount, but necessary for the maintaining the health, the balance inside your body. If it is missing, it used to produce certain symptomatology. And that symptomatology, which you used to get in psoric personality. There is definitely a correlation between the same. If you go through the materia medica and if you go with the magnesium, you are going to get the similar types of convulsions. When you prove the remedy, you are going to get the convulsions over there. So deficiency of magnesium on one side or manganese on one side can produce the same symptoms in the patient when it is proved in the human being. So he gives another example over there. Manganese is an accompaniment of the iron in practically all human tissue. Scientists have discovered that manganese starvation in animals will produce sterility in male and loss of mother love in female. This loss of maternal instinct incites them to refuse the attention to their young, who die in a few hours. McCollum tells us when to carefully prepared manganese-free diet is added as little as 5,000ths of 1% of manganese, all abnormalities described are corrected. Yet, Riemann and Minot tells us prolonged feeding of moderate amounts of its ores to the dogs failed to produce significant changes in manganese. content of the blood and tissues and to cause any pathological symptoms. It is comparatively easy to determine the broader outlines of constructive duties of these elements and inorganic substances, but it is subtle and potential influences, as illustrated by the observation of manganese, that are most pertinent to our thesis. In other words, it is not the overfeeding or gross starvation of any element that provides us the so-called psoric problem, but subtle functional disturbance with many sensations. It is in this subtler sphere that we find the connection between constructive essentials and so-called antisoric remedy. Since the so-called psoric conditions are legally functional and react preeminently upon nervous and emotional plane, may we not regard these conditions as the lack of balance in the ability to assimilate as well as possible starvation of the essentials. So, he explains over there that if manganese is lost in the diet, it produces certain symptomatology. Loss of maternal love, very important feature which you have to get over there. And this feature, if you have proved this, and if you open the Clark's Mathematical, you in the proving of the manganese, you are going to get similar type of symptomatology. So manganese free diet produces the sterility and in case of males, at the same time loss of mother maternal love in the female. And if you open the Clark's Mathematical, you're going to get the similar types of features during the proving. So this is what he wants to compare and he wants to show whether it is deficiency or whether it is psoric manifestation. In comparison of the constructive role of these substances as determined by laboratory technique with their more subtle manifestations demonstrated through the provings of the homeopathic potentiation, let us look again at manganese. Riemann and Maynard, Journal of Biological Chemistry, found it to be present in practically all human tissue, the liver carrying more than any other. J.H. Clark, Dictionary of Mathematics, cites its ability to produce inflammation and fatty degeneration of liver. We have seen its association with iron in blood, and homeopathically it has its place in anemic conditions when indicated. We have noted that laboratory observations of the loss of maternal instinct, Clark gives the first mental symptom, peevishness and taciturnity with concentration in itself. Concentration in cell. Sterility has not been proven symptom, yet Clark gives sensation of weakness in male genital organs. So, he is trying to correlate the mathematica with the deficiency symptomatology. So, on one side the Psora and on another side it is the deficiency. The correlation between these two things, and this is what one has to understand. This is what one has to correlate. This is his thought. It is not thorough, complete hypothesis, but he is trying to explain what he wants to say. And he wants to explain it to the world, to the modern people, that what we are talking about from homeopathic angle in the form of Psora is nothing but the way you talk it about the deficiency disorder. So in this chapter, he tries to correlate these two sides of the coin and wants to tell to the people and more allopath that there is a correlation between these two things. One has to understand. One has to understand the depth of it so that you will understand it in a better manner. So Hahnemann's concept of Sora which was very difficult to understand for the people who have not learned the homeopathy. The Roberts concept tries to make it simplified in such a manner so that everyone can understand it might be a deficiency. So some aspects of it we have learned in today's session. Tomorrow we'll continue with the same. We'll go slowly little bit because this is a big chapter and we have to understand all those concepts, how Robert tries to correlate the deficiency on one side and the psoric manifestation. So that's all for today. We'll meet tomorrow at the same time. We'll not have a 2 days mathematical session. Thank you and good night.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Have a good evening.
you, sir.